transcribe this one. Oh, good. Okay, you do. Good. I'm so glad you have this transcribed because this is going to be one of those ones where I'm going to read back and see how many times I cursed and see how few times you cursed, and I'm going to feel shame. But we're going to talk about some Philly sports and where our teams are at, huh?
Philadelphia sports. All right, so I saw an interesting question posed on Twitter, and I can't remember who posed it, but it was, where do you rate your four Philadelphia head coaches as it currently stands? And so we're talking the Phillies finished up their season. We've talked about that before, missing a World Series ring by a couple of wins. Right now, as we record this, the Eagles are 10-1. The Flyers just went on a nice torrid 10-game losing streak and are second from the bottom in the Metropolitan Division. And the Sixers, well, are massively underperforming. So I don't know. Let's just what do you think here? I'm curious to honestly think what, in order from worst to greatest right now as it sits, the head coaching for Philadelphia sports.
So I'm biased. I'm gonna say that right off the bat because going in, I fucking hate John Tortorella. I fucking hate him. I've always hated him. When he was coaching, there was talks that he was going to coach the U.S. Olympic team a few years ago, and I said, you know what? That's the thing that's going to make me fucking root for Canada over the U.S. So I would never go against the U.S. especially in hockey. But fuck John Tortorella. So John Tortorella, dude, he's lost the team already. He's only been the coach for fucking less than a quarter of a season, and
he got signed in July?
Yeah.
They signed him on a 4-year deal or something like that.
He's not going to make it 4 years.
Mm-mm.
If he's, I mean, they'll let him finish out this season because what's going to happen is Chuck Fletcher's going to get fired, the GM, and what they need to do is they need to start from scratch with their entire fucking front office and everything. They need to just wipe them all out and start fresh. So I can't see them firing Tortorella before the end of the season because need, basically what they need to do this season is they need to tank. They need to tank. They need to be sellers at the deadline. Get rid of pieces, and just, you know what? Just they need to suck because all right. So fucking Tortorella, and where I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. We're stuck with him. I might as well just try to make the best of it. This motherfucker talks about signing Tony DeAngelo, who's been kicked off of teams for making racist comments and shit and making racist actions and all kinds of slurs. He goes, "Oh, you need that. That's character, or that's what did he call it? I forget what the fuck he called it, but he was like basically saying that it was a good thing that he was a douchebag and that teams that are full of good people don't win championships." And I don't know that that's necessarily true.
No, look, there's a difference between being someone that's hard-nosed and hard, the way they play physically, especially with hockey, right? I mean, you don't have the Flyers teams of the 70s without the brutality,
right?
But you don't really read about anyone just sitting there. Now, who knows? We all know, we've all watched sports long enough to hear just not nice stuff, just whatever someone calls somebody, whatever. But it doesn't have to be through words, obviously. It's just physical stuff on the field, on the ice, on the court, whatever it is.
Right.
So, yeah, you can be a jerk that, I always like call it in baseball. They call it the clubhouse cancer.
Right.
You can be the jerk. You can mouth off all you want. You could be a great player. Ruins the team chemistry.
Right.
I mean.
And that what's funny is that player that he was standing up for, Tony DeAngelo, then the other day threw his stick up in the air out of frustration and skated off the ice and did not come back. And when they asked Torts about it, he said, "Oh, he'll either play tonight or he'll be out for 6 weeks." So
yeah,
he's completely lost. He's lost the team.
Yeah.
So fuck him. They just snapped their losing streak, like you said, in the span of a year and 9 days. And obviously this isn't all Tortorella because they started off with Vigneault last year. Then they went to Mike Yeo as the as the interim head coach, and now they've got him. But in the last year and 9 days, the Flyers have had losing streaks of 13 games, 10 games, 10 games, 6 games, and 6 games. They're not a good team. They've had a lot of bad break injuries. Now, my dad was saying something interesting, and I haven't seen this to corroborate it, but just to show how far the rot is in this organization. Apparently, last year when they traded Claude Giroux, the whole idea was he had got a handshake agreement behind the scenes that the Flyers would bring him back in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we all know, he ended up going to Ottawa. So clearly someone broke their word. And I'm willing to bet that it wasn't Claude Giroux. When they signed Tortorella, he was the guy, you know what, fuck that. I'm not coming back. You guys are idiots.
Because that's possible. Or maybe that was just, hey, you know what, we're wiping out all the handshake agreements altogether. I'm the new coach. I want he would be the one making that decision, but I'm sure he could still press the right buttons.
Yeah, and I could see him doing that because he's a piece of shit. So, but yeah, no. So fuck the Flyers. They're still my team, but I dude, it's so hard for me to watch right now. I've watched, and I just Carter Hart has played better this year. He's actually taken a step forward, which I'm surprised at because Torts is notorious for killing young players. I just can't see that. I can't see him. I don't know. I don't. I'm not a fan. I never will be. Never have been. And hopefully they get rid of him soon because I'd like to. Even though they're going to suck, I'd still be able to enjoy it a little bit more.
Right, and as it sits right now, we're just talking, like you said, just not a good team. So in the Eastern Conference right now, the goal differential is -19. It's the second worst behind the Blue Jackets. They're just not good. I mean, it's like you said, kind of a bad break, injury riddled, whatever. But I'm not a fan of the head coach either. And this, well, you and I said this earlier. The season was going to be a loss.
Right.
There was nothing really to look forward to, and in fact, the way they opened the season was a shock. It was like, hey, this looks pretty good, but everyone knew the wheels were going to fall off the bus, and they obviously have, and it's not going to be put back together. I think Tortorella finishes up this year. I don't know what happens beyond that. Having signed a 4-year contract, from my understanding, I can't imagine them seeing that all the way through, but I also can't imagine them just being like, well, you gave us a year. Someone's leaving money on the table,
No, here's what's going to happen is Chuck Fletcher will get fired either during the season or at season's end. His replacement will be hired over the summer. They'll probably put they'll name Danny Briere as the interim GM because right now he's working in the front office as an assistant, trying to get some kind of experience and everything in the role. He'll get named interim GM. Over the summer, they'll bring somebody else in. And then that GM will either, at that point, I can't see them firing Torts unless the season is just a complete shit show the rest of the way, which could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting that out of the realm of possibility. But I could see them giving him a very short leash going into next season and then him flaming out in the first week or two, maybe the first month, and then they bring somebody else in. But at this point, you're wasting years you've got a cornerstone goalie. You're wasting years of him. Travis Konechny has started it back up. He had a down year last year. He's still relatively young. You're wasting a year of him. You're wasting a year of Kevin Hayes is getting older. You're wasting a year of him. You'll get Sean Couturier back because he's one of the bad break injuries. He'll be back next season unless he suffers another weird ass injury.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lot of you do have young talent. Ivan Provorov has fallen off. I think the book is out on him and teams know how to counter him. So I'm not, you're wasting a year of him, but he's pretty much a waste at this point anyway. Ristolainen is shit. Like, you have so many. That's the problem. Is there's so many players in this team that should not. That's my feelings of the Flyers right now.
So I never had, looking at my four going from the bottom up, and I'm only going to say this: I gave Tort a little more than a 4 spot. I'm going to put him in the 3 spot for me. So the 4 spot's going to be Doc Rivers, and only because of one comment I saw yesterday, and it made me laugh because it's the absolute truth. Doc Rivers right now is literally Joe Girardi.
Yeah. No. He absolutely is.
And, you have all this talent in front of you, and I'm not saying they haven't had, their bad breaks either. And right now they're middle of the pack. If the playoffs were to start today, they'd have a spot. But they're not going to break the first round the way they sit. He needs to go, much the same way Girardi did. It's not a good fit. I don't follow the NBA a ton. But what I do follow is that he doesn't need to be head coach anymore.
Yeah,
so he's my 4th, and only for the sheer fact that he's had his chances. Now, granted, they had a nice run last year. Still think they underperformed. As far as where they ended up in the playoffs, I still think that could have gone further. I really do. But this year, what a joke start. They're barely above 500. I mean, it's look, Embiid, threw down a 50-pointer the other night. I mean, he's ridiculous. You have like a generational talent on the court every night. And
exactly.
It's a joke.
And that was what you took the words right out of my mouth. You have a generational talent, and you are wasting him. You have the talent on this fucking team. Do something with it. If Doc Rivers isn't going to do something with it, get somebody who will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who that person is, but there's got to be somebody who's better equipped to handle the talent on the Philadelphia 76ers than Doc Rivers. And literally the only reason that Doc is not 4 for me is because I hate John Tortorella.
And you let off with that too. It's a pretty obvious, hey, I don't like this guy, and I think that's the thing though, with either one of those guys, any rightfully minded person would throw those guys 3-4, 4-3, however, because are obvious to which we could same way. You could swap 1-2 being the Phillies and Eagles. We'll talk about that. It's look, Flyers we knew were not going to be good. We knew that going into this. The Sixers we had all this hope in the world for because of last season.
Mm-hmm.
We've got all this talent on the court. And look, I'm not saying that they haven't had their issues here and there, but look, the Ben Simmons stuff is long gone. You can look way past that now. You've got a lot of stuff that's, out of your sights.
Right.
Look what's in front of you, and they're obviously not. So all right. This will be fun. We'll leave the Eagles for, to me, I think that's a good main event because they're still playing, and they're still playing obviously very high level fun football right now. But you had mentioned to me just before as we started recording that the winter meetings were heading up starting next Monday, correct? For Major League Baseball?
December 4th.
Okay, so for the uninitiated, that's basically when all the the supervisory, management, executive personnel for different baseball teams kind of get together for their annual winter conference, if you will, and they kind of hodgepodge and they glad hand and they basically talent shop.
Right.
Is the way it goes. Sometimes you have big signings that come out of winter meetings. Sometimes you have big rumors that come out of winter meetings, and sometimes you have nothing.
Right. It's called, and the colloquial name for it is hot stove season.
Yep, exactly. It's interesting. So, we've talked about it here. We've already talked about it on this episode. The Phillies missed the World Series victory by a couple of wins. Rob Thompson takes over after Joe Girardi, after his absolute disaster start. Takes the Phillies, kind of squeaks into the playoffs, but does so without Bryce Harper for a good portion of the season. Wins a lot of ball games even without him, and that kind of made me think. So Harper had his Tommy John last week,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the speculation is that he's back by the All-Star break, and maybe at full speed, maybe actually playing right field July or August, which would be awesome. Be great to have him in the outfield. I think they've proven they can win without his bat in the lineup, which is a good thing. My big question marks, as I've mentioned before on here, are Castellanos needs to hit, because if he doesn't hit, then this team's in trouble. I don't care who they sign.
Right.
But the rumor that, obviously, I don't know if you follow trade rumors. Today, the article hit that Trey Turner was named basically the Phillies' top priority. So,
yeah,
I don't know. But to me, even if they sign him, and you could sign another, huge offensive piece. I don't know where you'd slot him in, but I really think next year hinges on Castellanos. I just really do.
I definitely agree. I would like to see, obviously Trey Turner is the guy that we talked about, that who we both would pretty much love to see at that shortstop position for the Phils. Read that same article you read. I've been seeing John Heyman said it in Sports Illustrated as well. I've also seen, though, another report from NBC Sports saying that the Phillies are in the lead for Xander Bogaerts. So I've been seeing more smoke with regards to Trey Turner, which obviously is who I want. I'm fair. That's who you wanted to. Right?
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense just for a team perspective.
Let me throw this at you. What if they get both?
Yeah, and I've thought about that too. You and I have kind of batted that idea around through text messaging. What if they ended up with two of the four? And really, if they do, it would be both Bogaerts and Turner. I doubt it, but it's a possibility. But I also doubted them getting Cliff Lee, 12 years ago or whenever that was. There's certain things that you just are like, what? Or even the Harper signing.
Right.
I think everyone was a foretold conclusion that he was either going to be going back to the Nationals or he was a Yankee.
Yeah.
It was, Phillies.
I think the Dodgers
were big too. Yeah. The crazy thing is that if you do that, what do you actually do with, somebody like Bryson Stott, who obviously is the low average fielder, maybe average, but does have a spark in the lineup, does see a lot of pitches. He's not offensively the greatest, but he, to me, is a good clubhouse guy. He's a good rookie. He's fun. He's through the system. He's, pretty friendly with Harper. I mean, they seem to get along pretty well there. I don't know. What do? Do you trade him?
So I've got a couple different plans here. One of them we kind of talked about, but we didn't really solidify on because there were so many unknowns with it. But how about Stott in right field and Castellanos at first? Trade Reese, or put Reese at DH during Harper's absence, and then when Harper comes back, you deal him at the deadline and bring in some arms.
Yeah, and it's possible. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know what. Let's see. What's Castellanos' first base experience? I don't even know.
I don't think he has any. I think maybe I think we looked it up and it was like one game or something.
Okay, that's right. I think that's going to be the problem. Is I don't know what you do there. I think honestly, if they really wanted to make some kind of defensive improvement, they would need to target a third baseman, move Bohm over to first. But the third baseman would have to be more defensively superior than Bohm, which is hard to find.
Right.
For one. But I don't know that again, we've kind of talked about that. I think, for Hoskins, I think this is his last hurrah, unless he really shows some kind of marked improvement. But, as well as I do, that, aging up in baseball and defensive skills do not go hand in hand.
Right.
And I think that's why I rest my laurels on Castellanos, even if Hoskins stays at first, or they, my thing is like, who do they get if they can trade him? I don't know,
Right.
And if they do, there's a myriad of people they're going to slap at first. Most likely, to me, if they don't trade for first baseman, I can see Derek Hall starting there.
Yeah, that would be. He provides the power numbers that are traditionally associated with a first baseman too. So it's not like throwing a, even if you were to move Stott there, Stott's not great defensively. He doesn't have the power that you typically associate with your first baseman. If Castellanos were to round back into shape, which we looked at his stats over the years and how they kind of ebb and flow from year to year, he kind of is a little bit more prototypical from the first base production standpoint. But again, he's played one game there. It's kind of hard to move somebody to a new position like that this far into the career.
Right.
You never know. I mean, another situation, maybe what you do is, and I don't know if he's ever done this, but one of the positions that seems to be an easier transition for players to make is from catcher to first base.
Right.
Catchers play first base all the time.
Yeah. No, that'd be interesting. The hard part is that you have the best catcher in baseball.
Right. Well, no, and I'm not talking about him.
Oh,
we have some young players in the minors.
Oh, minor. Okay.
That maybe you start cross training them in spring training, seeing how they play, and you look at them as maybe a defensive upgrade with offensive potential, with an offensive upside, and there's a lot of different ways you can go. None of them are set in stone. None of them are guaranteed to do any better for you than what you're getting from Reese.
Right.
But you owe it to yourself to look at any and all options to improve.
And I think the other thing too that we didn't talk about kind of in our early, way too early Phillies episode and just now, the shift is eliminated next year. And I only say that because, you might now have the possibility of even be a little more lenient on somebody's defensive mishaps if their offensive numbers are going to be boosted because the shift is gone.
All right. What I'm hearing,
it's going to apply to Reese necessarily, but
what I'm hearing from you is Ryan Howard coming out of retirement confirmed.
Exactly right. Man, could you imagine that? Ryan Howard's numbers in a shiftless baseball. I mean,
that would have been the dream.
Mm-hmm.
The shift gets taken out of the game in like 2007.
The dude would have Tony Gwynn average with Cecil Fielder power numbers every year.
Right. Exactly. How many times did we watch him just hit right into the shift? And listen, a lot of people, for whatever reason, dislike Ryan Howard. I am a Ryan Howard fan. I think
if it's not for Ryan Howard, the Phillies do not win 08.
Right.
They don't even get in for. I mean, he's. I'm not saying that he was the cornerstone, but he's.
There's a reason his nickname is the Big Piece.
Yeah, exactly. He's the powerhouse, and his numbers, like he did so many good things offensively. We could run an episode on him, but he did so many good things offensively at such a young age that he superseded a lot of Hall of Famers.
Yeah,
Ryan Howard's never going to make the Hall of Fame. It's just unfortunate. It's an unfortunate thing. Mainly because I think his career was cut short. As far as his prime years were cut short, where his numbers fell off really fast, particularly after he got hurt.
Right.
After the 11 season. If he rolled up another 5-6 good seasons in there, surefire Hall of Famer. But he ran those numbers up so quickly. And especially you have to think about this. He's the guy that took over for Jim Thome. 600 home run plus Jim Thome. I mean, come on.
Right.
Like, it's crazy to think about. Because who replaces him? And Jim Thome was still hitting a ton of home runs. It's not like he was, knocking on death's door, so to speak, for his career.
Well, and
toward the end of it, but
there's a reason that they brought Jim Thome back.
exactly,
Like
exactly.
people forget that he did come back to Philly while Ryan Howard was still with the team. He was still a good, Jim Thome could still hit the ball towards the end of his career, and he was brought back. It's not like the Philly, when the Phillies traded him, like you said, his career wasn't on death's door. He was still hitting, he was still mashing, and but they had to make room for Ryan Howard.
Yeah, he was moved to make, the Phillies were building back then. They had already, you already had Utley, you had Rollins in there. These pieces were being made from the minors, building, and it was just the next logical step.
Right.
He was blocking him, and I can only imagine had the designated hitter been around in that time frame, 2005, 2006. Could you imagine?
Dude.
Ryan Howard.
And here's the thing. I'm still I'm still not a DH guy. I'm still not.
I'm not either, but the whole it's funny we say that, but like had that not been existent, the Phillies do not go as far as they do in the playoffs, nor probably even make it.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because that's obviously what helped us be able to keep Bryce involved in the offense. And let's not pretend that he wasn't a huge reason for everything that happened this year. So, no, I think we can both agree that as much as we hate the DH, it was a necessary evil this year. And if it would have been, look, let's be honest. If we grew up American League, fans of an American League team, would we hate the DH?
Oh, absolutely not.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. I think, and again, I don't think this is meant to be a dump on, American League baseball, but I honestly think that being a fan of a National League team, and if you follow that team more specifically than just following baseball in general, you and I followed baseball, I think more generally, just in the sense of more than just our team, because we grew up in an era where you had really exciting players. You had Bo Jackson, you had Ken Griffey Jr., Nolan Ryan, you had Ricky Henderson, and all these really fantastic players that never sniffed a Phillies uniform.
No.
But they're so fun to watch in their own right. So you can appreciate the whole thing around. But being a fan of a National League team, you learned more about, the double switching. And, are they going to leave the pitcher in for one more inning? And they're going to take the hit because obviously this guy can't hit worth a darn, but he's lights out on the mound right now.
Right.
And it's that more the chess moves. Whereas you didn't have to deal with that in the American League. It's almost kind of wild where, it's really weird. Think about this. Every other sport, they play by the same rules. Baseball, they didn't for like 100 years.
Right.
Both leagues had different sets of rules.
Yeah, and it's like you said, there's no other, it's not like in hockey, the the Eastern Conference, you can play with an extra player in overtime or something, it's the same in both. It's not like in the NFL, in the NFC, you can go for two, but in the AFC you can't go for two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it would be like. It's like, extra point for the NFC, you're kicking from the 20-yard line. AFC, you got to go from 35.
Right.
But that slight difference and something like that, just and really, and this could be a good segue as we get into the NFL speak here. They moved back recently in the last few years how far you kick that extra point. And look what that's forced more teams to do. More 2-point conversions. Because honestly, I don't know how many times every week I watch, and it's like, well, off and upright, or they go wide left on an extra point or wide right. And it's like, are you kidding me? But it's like, it's from a much further distance.
Yeah.
And, look, I'm not a professional kicker. I don't want to sit here and dog the guys, but it makes it more interesting.
And I want to throw this at you too, because I don't know. Have you ever actually tried to kick an extra point?
dude, maybe like 20 plus odd years ago, and I couldn't do it then, and I can't do it now.
Yeah, I've tried, like, legit tried, and no, I was kicking it into the back of the lineman. They're pissed. They did not like it. Dude, it's hard. It's hard as much as it's such an automatic thing for them. And look at it this way too, is since we are, I guess, segueing into football already. Jake Elliott, who this week passed David Akers for the most field goals from 50, I want to say 54 yards or more. Something like that. It's like from 50 or 50. He's the most accurate long distance kicker that the Eagles have ever had. He has in his career, oh no, that's what it is. It's the most field goals from 50 plus yards, because he has the same amount of field goals from 54 or more he's made than all Eagles kickers combined in the history of the team.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
He's already had in his career.
Wow.
So, and he missed an extra point this past week against Green Bay, and then Green Bay turned around and missed an extra point too.
Right.
So it was, it just goes to show, like, those little variations that you take. It's something that used to be automatic, that, like, we would miss them in very rarely, but we would miss them in, like, Tecmo Super Bowl and stuff.
Mhm.
Oh, that never happens in real life. And now all of a sudden you got teams missing them because they.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. It actually kind of makes Tecmo, obviously minus the 2-point conversion part, it actually makes that more realistic, because it is harder to make them in that. It's a timing aspect.
Yeah.
If you just time it and you kick the hashes, I mean, it could easily ding off the upright. So,
Yeah.
And that's what's happening a lot. I don't know. Again, I think it's more of a distance thing, but I also think it's kind of like the yips too. Where, in baseball, who was the third base? Was it Zimmerman for the Nationals? Chuck Knobloch too. Where it's like you just can't throw. Like you just it's like it just completely misses. It does whatever. Like I know Zimmerman did it quite a bit, where the guy was a tremendous third baseman, but then like he would like have to make some really simple routine play, and he'd screw it up every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like, I can't exactly remember what it was with him, but like I don't know if it was like handling a bunt or something, like where it was like everyone else was like automatic, and like he would just like throw it into the second row.
Yeah,
and it's like the weirdest thing, because you have like a elite player, and I don't know that that's what's happening with some of these kickers, other than I know it's difficult. I know it's further away, but I think sometimes it's like it almost gets in their heads, like, oh man, they added this extra distance. I know I can kick 60 some odd yards, but man, it should be an easy point, and it's not. It's interesting. So let's talk about the football thing, though. We did an Eagles season preview episode, which actually turned out to be quite prophetic as we stand now. You had made a comment saying that every single game on this schedule is winnable, and they're 10-1.
I don't want to say I told you so, but dude, and they're winning. Some of these games they're winning despite themselves, and I don't want to. That sounds bad when I say it, but the defense has had its moments where it's been really, really good, and it's had its moments when it's been really, really bad. They're not tackling well. Their special teams is atrocious. Their kick coverage and punt is fucking terrible. But the X factor is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts looks like 11 games into his second season as the full-time starter, looks like he has taken that next step. And what it comes down to is something that I said at the beginning of the season. This is the first time in his entire football career since high school that he has had 2 years in the same system, with the same head coach, with the same offensive coordinator. Yep. And the amount of consistency that builds, and the amount of confidence that builds in a quarterback, and it allows them to recognize and get more comfortable with things and be able to think, all right, I know this offense well enough. I know that if the defense lines up in in a Tampa 2, in a 2 safety high shell, this is what the safeties are going to do. This is where the corners are going to go. This is how they're going to bring the rush. This is what my players are doing, and you start to recognize patterns better. You start to know what you can do to exploit the defenses and the fronts you're seeing and the defensive coverages you're seeing. And he's able to do that. And Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, the head coach and the offensive coordinator, both have said that he started, in the first season, he would do whatever they would say. He would go out and execute.
Mm-hmm.
This season, he's actually able to come back to them and say, hey, I noticed this. When they're lining up like this, because we've lined up in this formation, this is what their safeties are doing. This is where their linebackers are going. This is how their corners are covering. And he's able to start helping them dissect things from what he sees on the field, which is helping overall in how they're performing offensively.
Yeah, no, and I not this season preview, but the last season preview, I had and I'll be kind of paraphrasing myself here, but I had thought that I wanted to see him excel on such a high level. I wanted him to be our quarterback for however long, whatever it took to build this next big playoff run, akin to what we saw with McNabb, kind of the build. Yeah, I guess you could say it kind of started with Wentz, Foles era into now. They've been pretty competitive ever since the Super Bowl victory. To me, they have, for the most part.
For the most part.
It's been watchable. I'll say that. It's not like it's been like, oh, we got to worry about a 2 or 3 win team here. We're always at least sniffing at a decent record and most likely in the playoffs. But I wanted this because I saw what Mahomes did in Kansas City. I saw what some of these good Randall Cunningham-esque quarterbacks have done, and Hurts is like another level of that. And my thing with him is that like he's got vision like none other. I've never seen it. This guy just finds space. I don't know how. I don't know why, but he just sees it. And you look at this past game against Green Bay, he's sitting there setting records for most yards rushed by Eagles quarterback. Something like that.
Yes, he did. He got the Eagles quarterback rush.
Yeah. It was like 150 something, or 140 something.
158.
Yeah. And then still is able to make his targets. And here's the thing: he's he's apt to make those deep or longer, to AJ Brown or Quez or some of these receivers. He did this on the ground with Miles Sanders, also contributed a ton of yards, by the way, without Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is go-to me. Much like Travis Kelce is for Mahomes, Goedert is like that for Hurts. And he's not, what I mean? He's not there.
Yeah. Well, Dallas Goedert could be what I was hoping they would do is kind of give his plays to what's his name? Grant Calcaterra.
Mm-hmm.
That they drafted. They've been using more Jack Stoll. They've been putting Tyree Jackson. Is it Jackson or John? Shit.
It's Tyree Jackson, yeah.
Jackson. So he's the guy that used to be quarterback.
Yeah, and he's the one that has all sorts of ceiling. He just been hurt.
Right. He's 6'7". He's a huge red zone target. If they could, what they should do is start throwing some of the passes they were throwing to Goddard to him, and then keep that area open. You don't have to close off that part of the playbook. Goddard should be back soon enough. But this offense is really, man, it has the potential. So there's only 3 quarterbacks that have had more rushing yards in a game than what Jalen Hurts had. It was 157. So those 157 ends up giving him The only quarterbacks that have rushed for more yards in a game are Colin Kaepernick, who had 181 yards in a playoff game. Justin Fields had 157 rushing yards. Oh, okay. My apologies. This is the quarterbacks who have run for 150 yards and 2 passing touchdowns in the same game.
Okay.
All right. He's the first one to do it in a regular season win because Colin Kaepernick did it. He did 181 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a playoff win. And Justin Fields ran for 157 and threw for 3 touchdowns. And but he lost. And so, interesting fact: the only other player in NFL history with 150 rushing yards and 2 passing touchdowns in the same game, aside from those from Hurts, Kaepernick, and Fields, Walter Payton. In 1983,
the running
back for the Bears.
Oh, yeah, I guess they would have.
He had 161 rushing yards and threw for 2 passes on trick plays in a loss to the Saints in 1983. Here's the stat
that's like the most Bears thing ever, by the way.
Oh yeah. So here's the stat that I was looking for. Hurts' 157 yards are 5th most in NFL history in a game by a quarterback, behind Kaepernick with 181, Fields with 178, and Michael Vick, who had 173 yards versus the Vikings in 2002 and 166 versus the Saints in 2006. Vick held the previous Eagles record with 130 yards against the Giants in 2010. So, and his 157 yards in one game are the most by any Eagle in exactly 8 years, since LaShawn McCoy had 159 at Dallas on November 27th, 2014. His 9.2 yards per rush average is the highest by an Eagle with 150 more rushing yards since Bryce Brown's 178-yard game against the Panthers in 2012, where Brown averaged 9.4 yards per carry.
Oh God, there's a name I forgot.
Yeah. So thanks to Ruben Frank from NBC Sports for those stats.
Yeah, it was good. Always good for some numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. But I think that's what makes it so exciting is that we finally have somebody that, to me, the most exciting quarterback to watch for the last several years. I've already said it was Mahomes to me. I just love it. And I think part of it's because he's, under Andy Reid. As much as I hate to say it, and where I live, we get a lot of Chiefs football. So I get to watch a lot of that. And it's exciting. And to finally have that, and I'm not saying that it wasn't exciting for, a Nick Foles won Super Bowl. And I'm not saying it wasn't exciting to see Wentz excel when he did. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying it feels like, hey, we're the talk of the town. You know what I mean? Like, we're 10-1. We have this fantastic offense. It's, still has holes. Look, we're kind of without a top tight end right now. We're still trying to figure out some things in the passing game, honestly.
Right.
There's for the first part of the season, it was kind of lights out. Now it's, more ground based. But look, they're winning ball games. I'm not complaining about that. Defense, they made a couple moves. They signed Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. Looks like Jordan Davis is about ready to come back here in the next I think he's 3 weeks away, maybe.
Yeah, if that. He'll be back sooner rather than later.
It's really, really exciting times. Hey, they had a heck of a time beating the Colts. It was a 1-pointer, last minute kind of win on a Hurts run in. The Packers, kind of at least stuck with them. It wasn't a complete walkover. But I think that's the fun thing about football. Unless you're the Texans, which, the Eagles kind of had the Texans kind of gave them a little run too. Not really, but kind of.
Well, you know what? And here's the thing, because I've had this conversation with a couple of people, and they said, "Oh, you guys almost lost to Detroit. You guys almost lost to Houston.
But that's
You lost."
football.
But exactly, and that's the thing. On any given Sunday, any team can beat any other team.
Mhm.
That's why they play the game. And the other thing that you got to look at is, and obviously I'd never played at the level that these guys played at, but if I knew that I was playing a team that was really good or a team that I hated, you get up for that game. I mean, if you're not getting up for every NFL game you're playing, but if you're the underdog, you've got that extra motivation. Everybody wants to knock off the guy that's on top of the heap. That's why. Look, I hate that I'm putting this to record by having it recorded, me saying this. But look, when we were younger, Dallas won 3 Super Bowls, right?
Mhm.
You know what made beating them so damn satisfying, besides the fact that it was an Eagles win? They were the team that was America's team. They were the team that was good. They were the champs so often that it felt really damn good to just punch them in the mouth.
Mhm.
It gave it that extra. We may not. My whole thing when I was younger was, look, I never thought the Eagles would win the Super Bowl. I always hoped, but I was raised in Negadelphia, much like you were,
Mhm.
and we've gotten to a point where we're past that. But when I was younger, I never thought the Eagles would win a Super Bowl. My hope was every year that we just beat the ever living shit out of the Dallas Cowboys, and then because I was just so used to losing. That's how I always hoped the Eagles would win. I never really thought it would happen. But if we beat the shit out of the Dallas Cowboys, we went 2-14. The year wasn't a total loss.
Right. Yeah. No. And look, I mean, we didn't have a whole. And here's the thing, too. You kind of go back and look at that. We didn't have a whole lot to cheer about,
Right.
either. So, I think that's why you have things like the '93 Phillies are so fond memories, because, oh my God, you had this like ragtag bunch of guys that made it all the way to the World Series. Give you something to cheer about. The Eagles were strong through, obviously, the Buddy Ryan years, and then much like Doc Rivers, or Joe Girardi for that matter, we get handed Rich Kotite. And look, I mean, you still have a good solid core there, but the coaching was so atrocious that not a whole lot to cheer about, to be honest. But like the one time where they do get and they beat the Cowboys, or they just beat the Giants, or just division rivalry games where they win, it felt that much better, because it's like, you know what, look, they won 4 or 5 games this season. They weren't going to make the playoffs, but it was something,
Right.
Look, you and I have talked about this in a preview. And I think that's football, like you said. Any given Sunday, every single game on this Eagles schedule was winnable. They're set at 10-1 right now. I don't know how this finishes. I don't know how far they go. I really don't. I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. Heck, they could win out the rest of the regular season and get conked the first playoff game they play. I don't know. What I know right now is it's exciting.
Right.
And they're the talk of the town, and I'm enjoying every freaking second of it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Hell yeah. It's awesome. I think you have some unheralded kind of players too that you're really starting to kind of look at, and like in the secondary, my goodness, secondary is dynamite right now, and it was kind of a shame to see Gardner Joseph, or was it Gardner Johnson, get bumped off the field in that last game. He came back.
No, he didn't. He
didn't come back. I'm sorry.
He's out for multiple weeks.
That's right. I'm sorry. Who was in this? Wasn't there someone in the secondary came? I could be thinking of someone else, but no. But I mean, but he, he was so exciting. He was he was leading the league in interceptions, didn't he?
Yeah, he's
At
leading the
6?
league in interceptions with 6. An undrafted free agent safety, Reed
Blankenship. Yeah, that's right.
comes in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, somebody came back with an interception. It was Blankenship.
So no, a few weeks ago, Gardner Johnson got hurt, left the game, and then came back and got an interception.
That's what I'm okay. Okay, yeah. I knew my mind was working.
That was the Dallas game.
Yeah, See, here's the part about getting older. You kind of start running things together. I knew he left one game and came back and got an interception, and I just but no, man, it's been so exciting to see like some of these players just really develop into like all like really upper echelon all pros, like that aren't part of the everyday conversation.
Right.
Honestly.
TJ Edwards, the linebacker, is having an outstanding year. He's not going to get, I don't think, a Pro Bowl nod because he's not a household name. But dude is playing lights out at linebacker, which we haven't had that since the days of Seth Joyner and William Thomas and Byron Evans and stuff like that. We've had linebackers. Trotter, obviously, being one of them, was probably the most recent.
Really good one. Yeah.
Caliber, all pro caliber linebacker we had. But he's been fantastic. And then you've got Marcus Epps playing the other safety position, and he's doing really well. The biggest person that we haven't been talking about that got hurt, and it's really hurt their secondary, is Avonte Maddox as the nickel corner. He's been out. Josiah Scott stepped up for him. Actually, another undrafted free agent, and he got his first pick off of Aaron Rodgers. So that's 2 undrafted free agents that got interceptions off of Aaron Rodgers in the same game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
When Aaron Rodgers had never been picked off by an undrafted free agent before.
Yep.
So there you go. You got that. And then the problem is the line is just not. They're not getting the pressure they need to, and it's not a matter of skill. It's just the scheme. Jonathan Gannon is not having them put pressure.
Yeah, I'm not certain that I've bought in to a lot of what I see there. There was a lot of easy yards given up, in that Packers game. And I quite honestly, a lot of easy yards given up in a lot of games. It's hard to watch, but I think it's also like, this isn't the end of the world because we've got Hurts, come back and get those points back.
Well, and that's the thing. And honestly, it's even hard to put as much as I don't like Gannon's scheme, and I really do hope they go a different direction. I'm the scuttlebutt is that he's going to be getting head coach offers, which again, we talked about this before, where maybe he's a great leader of men like Dougie P. Mm-hmm. Dougie P, I don't think is a great offensive mastermind, but I'll tell you what, man, dude can coach. He can be a head coach. He can lead men. And I think that maybe that's where Jonathan Gannon's strength lies.
Very well could be.
They need to remove him, though, as head coach or as a defense coordinator, move on from him, bring in somebody with a little bit more of an aggressive scheme. But the biggest problem that they're facing, like we said towards the kickoff of this episode, is that special teams unit. And that when you're starting on a short field with the fumble, there was a fumble in the last game by A.J. Brown that gave the Packers the ball in the Eagles' red zone, or in their own red zone, I believe. There was the 2 kickoff returns that got returned near midfield. One of them was actually over midfield. I think they got to like the 43 or something like that. But when your defense is starting off on a short field, almost every single drive, mm-hmm. you're going to give up points. It's going to happen, especially when you've got Aaron Rodgers on the other side.
Right. No, and I think that's, we've sat here and you and I have done it, off record here, but dogged Aaron Rodgers, particularly this season, and and for his off the field stuff or whatever it is. But look, the guy is still a knockout quarterback. There's a reason why he's got a lot of money coming to him. He's the league's reigning MVP. I mean, we're not talking about, joke here. At some point, it is very possible if he gets his head back together, this guy's going to knock it out again. His big problem to me this year is that he had basically, outside of maybe Aaron Jones, every single one of his weapons taken away from him.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just run-of-the-mill players. I mean, look, Devontae Adams, leads the league in receiving touchdowns again with Derek Carr. Come on, look, that means Devontae Adams could lead the league in touchdowns with you or me.
Right.
I mean,
Hey,
it's almost comical.
I can throw this your football over the mountains.
It's right. But so let's finish this up by going back to the original question. We'll wrap it back up. So we kind of went back and forth with number 3 and 4 being Doc Rivers, Tort, for our respective 3 and 4. But what about your 1 and 2? So who's your 1 and 2 top coaches right now for Philadelphia sports between the Eagles and the Phillies?
So I'm actually gonna surprise you when I say this, I think, but I'm giving the number 2 nod to Sirianni. And I'm giving Philly Rob the number 1 spot because look, man, he took them to the promised land. He got them from just a struggling, middling team, and pushed the right buttons. He did everything he needed to do. He got the guys to believe in themselves, got the guys to buy in, and he took that team to the World Series. Granted, they lost, but that wasn't Rob Thompson. That wasn't Rob Thompson's fault.
No, that's my 1 and 2 as well. Philly Rob and Sirianni, only for that reason. Once Sirianni, gets them to a high end of the playoffs. I'm not even going to say Super Bowl right now.
Fuck it.
Then I would start really batting that around. But Rob Thompson took a losing team, won a ton of games without their megastar, and still took him to the World Series.
Right.
And just a fantastic job. It's exciting times for Phillies and Eagles fans. Maybe not so much right now for Flyers fans. And if you're a Sixers fan, well,
Sixers fans, I think, are just hoping that any day now we wake up and see, oh, hey, look, Doc Rivers got fired. That's pretty much what we're waiting for at this point. Flyers fans, we're waiting for Comcast to sell the damn team.